It's
We're
recording.
on.
Hello.
Max, introduce who we have.
Hi. Welcome to the Many Shades of Green Zoomcast version. And hi, Malcolm. And we're here with Sid Mandelbaum. You know, our show, we try to mix up our greens a bit because we want to encourage people to take action and to protect Mother Earth because we want to raise everyone's eco consciousness and socio consciousness and get people to see, the side of good, and there's so much craziness in this world. So, and due to COVID-19, millions of people are food insecure, and we need organizations to step up and help those most in need. And so we have our wonderful guest today, Sid Mandelbaum, and he has been on the forefront in helping those in need for 20 years or more. I think more than 20. Sid is the founder of Rock and Wrap It Up, which is an award winning anti poverty think tank. And he established it in honor of his parents who were Holocaust survivors. And he vowed to reduce poverty and hunger in the U.S., introduced and helped pass the Federal Food Donation Act. And since 1991, Rock and Wrapping Up has fed over 1 billion people who deal with hunger. Sid is also a scientist who researched DNA, genetics, and cancer for think tanks across the country. He helped develop the Whole Earth Calculator mobile app to quantify and correlate the relationship between food waste and greenhouse gas emissions. He also started Hannah's Project, and as a result of his service in the Air Force, he started the Feed the Veterans database to help men and women who served our country. Sid, you have done so much. So welcome to the Many Shades of Green. How you
I,
doing today?
I'm honored to be chosen to be one of your guests.
Yeah. Well,
And we are freezing. Our tuchus is off here in New York.
yeah, it's a little cold.
A little
I
cold.
went I went for a walk. I didn't take my dog because had a she just was spayed. She's a pup, so I can't take her on long walks. But I needed a long walk, so I just went out and froze my butt off. So that's true. So anyway, for people to get an idea of what Rock and Wrap It Up is about, like how did it start, and how is it adjusting now under the COVID conditions?
Well, it started in a pretty simple way. I was very affected by my parents being survivors, and I would always hear stories about how they starved, and they would wake up in the morning and people in concentration camp would be dead next to them, died of starvation. And when they were allowed to come to the United States in 1950, um, they they knew that they came to the promised land in every way from where they had come from. And as I grew up, I really felt to honor this country really for taking them in when no one else would take survivors in. I wanted to do something for America, and that would be in my own way to try to reduce hunger and poverty. And at a young age, I started volunteering at a soup kitchen, getting them food from local stores in 1986. And by 1991, I was asked to be president of the soup kitchen, which I did for 7 years. And it taught me what the needs are. There are things like hunger because you're hungry, and then there's food insecurity, which is totally different.
Right.
Uh, Along the way, you had mentioned I had been in the Air Force, and one of the projects that I had done, I started videotaping Holocaust survivors and camp liberators in 1981. I had gone to Israel with my dad, and I had an epiphany with him, and I came back ready to change the world. And one of the things I came up with was to videotape survivors and camp liberators, and we taped for 12 years. I gave the project to Steve Spielberg in 1993, and Steve did it for another 12, 13 years. But I was asked to become Human Rights Commissioner because I had taped a liberator named Fran Purcell, and Fran was the county executive of the county of Nassau. And my old Air Force commander saw an article in the paper, called me up and said, Sid, you're doing great things. I want you to serve in the Human Rights Commission of Nassau County as commissioner, which I did. And during that time, we did the first Human Rights on My Responsibility conference at Hofstra. And our first keynote speaker was Sandy Chapin. Sandy's late husband, Harry Chapin, had founded Long Island Cats Food Bank. And Sandy asked me to serve on their board of directors, which I did. And it actually gave me both kind of horizontal and vertical vision of how food and hunger were correlated. And in 1989, she asked me to do her first fundraiser. And the first person we went to was Ron Delsner, who had managed her late husband. And Ron said, Sid, I really don't give money, but there's always food available at Jones Beach Theater. And we're throwing out a load of it, and you're welcome to it. And that was December 1990, just about 30 years ago. And in May of 91, we started doing food recovery at Jones Beach for 3 years. And then I realized one of the backstage managers came to me and said, Sid, I want you to see this contract. And he showed me a rider, which is what bands use to explain what they need as they go on the road. And in the rider was, the band was the Black Crows. And on one of the pages, it said they need a ½ ounce of pot in every dressing room. And I looked at it, I go, wow, that's kind of novel. And he said, yeah, they're doing it because they're showing the world that they are pro the liberalization of marijuana laws. And it hit me like a thunderclap. Well, what if I want to feed people? Can I put that in the contract? And he looked at me and said, that's a great idea. And that's how Rock and Wrap It Up really was born nationally, where we came up with contractual obligation in the contract of the bands. That's how we got our name, Rock and Wrap It Up, was a stipulation that said all edible leftover food, but bad but not served, cannot be thrown away, must feed the hungry, and Rock and Wrap It Up will arrange for the recovery. And the first band that joined us was the Rolling Stones. Mick Jack had already thought this up 20 years earlier, but didn't know how to implement it. And I come along and voila, the second band to join us was an American band, Aerosmith. And they all had huge tours. We were then joined by Nine Inch Nails, Bruce Hornsby, Candlebox, Fish, all put us in their contract. I had already met their managers backstage in the 3 years I was doing food pickups. Right. And that's how we were able to launch. And in Labor Day weekend of '94, MTV did a special on us. And that got us hundreds of volunteers nationwide.
Yes, Sid, I have a question for you. I've always thought if the food was unwrapped and prepared, that you couldn't give it away, you had to throw it out.
Right, so that is a misconception. And I'll go through a series of laws that were written to correct that. In 1995, Congressman Bill Emerson, who's since deceased, had written a series of laws called the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Acts that protect all donors for liability. We are all trained in food handling. And one of the things that we do is the food that we accept is prepared but not served. And catering works in a way that there's always 10% overage. They wouldn't be caterers, they wouldn't make more because they can never run out. And we were able to get food prepared but not served, which would be hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food. And as we continued doing this, we were able to get over 160 bands to put us in their contract rider and fed millions and millions of people just through rock and roll, which is one of the smaller sectors that we work in.
How do you just, once you have it, how do you distribute the food?
Okay, so one of the stipulations that we made was that whoever picked the food up had the responsibility of serving it. So we were able to work with agencies across America and Canada and other places that were already doing food dispensing. And they would have to have a health certificate issued by a local municipality. They'd have to be able to go and pick it up safely. They would have to be able to go on the internet because we were one of the first digital charities. As a scientist, I was involved in IT and back in the mid 1980s. And we had forms that they would fill out. And in many cases, and if you remember, people would fax and we would get faxed receipts that they could download from our website how much food was picked up, where it went, and the date. And all that was uh, correlated by our IT people. And eventually we were able to give the bands totals of what their tour donated. And in some instances, they were able to write that off through their accounting. Um, but the whole key is that the need is so great throughout the whole country and has been. Uh, for most of us that are, I, I have a lot of different degrees, and one of them is in economics. I had to get that for my MBA. And there's something called Keynesian economic theory that basically says that capitalism is really not based on 100% inclusion. It's based on 90% inclusion. In a country like ours that has 330 million people, you always have 30 million people that are not part of the success and never will be. So in Keynesian economic thought, correlated with Rock and Wrap It Up, we know that we're going to always feed forever 30 million people that will not be part of the success, regardless of what we do. And a lot of that has to do with people that have been incarcerated that can't get jobs, people that are in between jobs. There are people that are single parent households. All of these add to that equation. And we have set up systems throughout the United States, very behind the scene, that are able to get food in massive quantities to the at-risk populations.
How about now? I mean, a lot of the venues, music and sports venues that you use, they're closed. And so, what's your strategy for getting things to food banks now during COVID? And there's more food insecurity now than ever. So,
So,
how do you work it now?
for the first 6 months, for actually from February through June, we were still picking up all of the food that had been ordered by all of our sport teams, by Universal, by Disney, places that had already ordered and then closed down and had dating issues. Rock and Wrap It Up arranged to pick up all of that food from those venues. I'll use Madison Square Garden as an example. They had ordered food for February of 2020 for Nick game, a Ranger game, and a Billy Joel concert. All three got canceled. We picked up 30,000 pounds of food that week. Then in March, they realized that they had bought food for the season, uh, and that food was getting short dated. We had the same thing with the New York Football Giants. We picked up 10,000 pounds of food from Giant Stadium. The biggest local donor was the New York Yankees that had ordered food in February. And in May, we picked up 40,000 pounds of food that was absorbed by all of the agencies. But a couple of things have happened which are very positive. A lot of the COVID money that has gone to counties, and I'll use Nassau County as an example. Nassau County got over $3 million to help feed the hungry of Nassau County. We had a relationship with a community center. We were able to help them get a certificate to become a dispensary of food through Long Island Cares. And Long Island Cares is always looking for places, as is Island Harvest, City Harvest, and a group of agencies throughout the state. And it was that funding that has helped them continue to do this. And hopefully there'll be additional rounds of funding going through. But as you said earlier, Maxine, the numbers are staggering for a population that sadly is novel. Many of them have never had to deal with a food bank, never have had to deal with a pantry. It's not in the lexicon, so to speak, and we have been able to kind of steer them into those areas. Now, some of the more positive things that have happened, we recently developed a relationship, recently is March of last year, with Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is an agency, is a store that prides itself in having the freshest foods, and which meant that they were replacing on their shelves food that was always in date, but may not have been something that you would have selected first.
Mhm.
Trader Joe's now donates to Rock and Wrap It Up 3 days a week between 2,000 and 3,000 pounds of food,
Wow.
Wow.
and looking to expand that. And that food on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 2/3 of that food goes directly to the Five-Town Community Center Gammy's Pantry. 1/3 of the food we glean off to set up veteran farmers markets. And we have it set up in our office. We have a large space that we set up tables just like a farmer's market. The reason being, and as you had said, I'm a former Air Force veteran. I'm also serving as commander of the American Legion for Lawrence Cedarhurst. That's a very old, almost 100-year-old post. But I was very upset because I saw quite a number of our senior veterans back in March and April in stores like Costco, Food Town, Stop and Shop, Trader Joe's. And it bothered the heck out of me because they were vulnerable and they were all over 70, most of them, some of them over 80, and yet they had no choice but to go to these stores and expose themselves.
Right.
So I decided to try to pilot, and I spoke to some of my post members and they were willing to do it with us. If we could give them a place that they could safely shop, masked, socially distanced, but with no population around them. And we piloted that program in June for a month, got all of the kinks out of it, and we launched it July 1st. And we now have 15 families that come for an hour and change to pick up pretty much 90% of what they would need. Our goal is to do this on a national basis. I know that the partners that I have, Costco being the largest donor to us, and Trader Joe's, have stores literally every 5 miles, 10 miles throughout the whole country in the larger cities. We believe that we could set up these farmers markets everywhere. And it could be for people that are at risk. It doesn't have to just be for veterans, which it's made for. But I have a lot of my friends who are cancer patients right now. They cannot be in crowds for a minimum, many reasons. I have people that are the widows of veterans. We have caregivers of veterans that the veterans can't leave the house, but the
Exactly.
caregivers can. So
Right.
we are trying to have this cohort of people that could take advantage of this. And Trader Joe's does not charge us a cent, neither does Costco. And this is all saving our veterans probably hundreds of dollars a month.
That's
So
fabulous. I mean, you work with veterans. You started, to a program to feed the veterans and also to do. You have a database for them, correct? I
yes,
mean,
well,
for other things, not just food, but
we we started
education.
something called we started the Andy Parisi Veteran Toolkit. And that was done through Jim Spellos, who's our IT director, and myself. And what that is a database for veterans that are not necessarily at risk, but veterans in general. We have colleges that are vet friendly, employers that are vet friendly, franchises that they could purchase, therapists if they need to see them. A lot of people don't know that if you go to a VA and you are suffering from PSD, it gets recorded. And if you go to apply for a uniform job, it could be firefighter, police, criminal, there's a chance you won't get the job because of this on your record.
Really?
So what we do is, and this was told to us by the VA, who told us it would be so important to have therapists in our veterans toolkit just for that purpose. And we do. And
Wow.
in the coming months, we have another idea that we're pursuing. We publish a daily newspaper. It's called the Whole Earth Calculator. We're now in our 4th year, and we use software that is able to glean keywords and phrases from hundreds of documents, and we publish a newspaper to fight hunger and poverty every day, 365 days a year. And it's passive on our end. We set it up telling them what it needs to be in there. And that newspaper is read by thousands of people every day. I now want to set up what I've called the Veterans Digest, like Reader's Digest, but the Veterans Digest do the same thing, to have dozens of stories every day gleaned from all different blogs of people that are doing writings in newspapers. And again, passively have that collected by the software and publish a daily Veterans Digest.
That would be fantastic. You're doing great work with veterans, but I know you're also doing great work with a project called Hannah's Project,
Oh, yeah.
and that's women and girls, and has to do with you. You tell us, what's the project about?
Okay, so it actually had two names, and one I had to change.
Okay.
It started out being called Mardi Gras, and it was for college girls to do community service, to collect feminine products for at-risk women at their schools. And we had NYU, we had Cooper Union, we had a couple of New York schools that jumped right into this. And Mardi Gras was actually launched by Rock and Wrap It Up and Sharon Osbourne. Sharon's a close friend of the charity. And we did our first Mardi Gras on Mardi Gras night 5 years ago at the Sofitel Hotel in Beverly Hills. And admission, it was 95% women for one reason. Girls were encouraged to come with the most fancy bra tops and bring feminine products. 200 women showed up in broad tops, and in LA, as in other places, women are not bashful having beautiful bras that they're going to show off. And all the men that were there, I guess, just brought product and did not wear broad tops. But that launched the project. And
They
then
can bring
after
bra tops now.
they sure,
Men.
and we had Kelly Osbourne actually donated $1,000 in product to us at that point. Sharon's been with us close to 30 years. When Ozzy was not Ozzy, he was like the third band of, there were three bands playing. They joined Rock and Wrap It Up and started donating food to us back in 1995. And Sharon came up with the idea of giving us, when they went to hotels, and this is right up our alley to segue into green, there were shampoos that were not used in hotels. And every show, Sharon would have a box set up. This was a European tour of 97. They collected thousands of small shampoos, conditioners, hand lotions, and sent them to me from Europe. And we received thousands. We would always know the box because it stunk, because something would always open up in the box and
Right.
you knew what was in it. But that was Sharon's idea. And
Wow.
I give her credit because we launched Hotel Wrap just from that back in 98, which we've had great success with. But
Wow.
the key is for, other than food, the number one item that's asked for in every pantry and shelter are feminine items. It is not covered, sadly, by food stamps. You'd think of all the things that could be covered, that is not covered. So we realized that, and when we launched Mardi Gras, and then we called it Hannah's Project because there was some pushback with high school Girl Scouts, high school groups, and I'm a Jewish man who prays every day. I'm part of a Minyan Society, and I remember at Rosh Hashanah time there was a parsha that was covered about Hannah. Hannah was a second wife and was barren, and Hannah basically prayed to God, and God gave her a son, which she literally gave to the temple because she was so happy to have the child. So Hannah's Project is a woman that sought dignity, and we now call Hannah's Project the main project, and we have dozens and dozens now of people that are interested in growing this. And there are some other things that, we are doing an advocacy project right now through Hannah's project. New York State became the first state to require middle and high schools to supply feminine products to at-risk girls in their school. The only thing they didn't do was fund it. So Hannah's project fits right in like tongue and groove, because girls, and I'll tell you, locally here, Lynbrook High School was the first high school to do this. And I did a great talk there, but they came back with the greatest ideas. And I learned from everyone, because the more people you speak to, the smarter you get. And the kids came up with, why don't we just leave the tampons in the girls' locker room, where no one has to ask for them. If a girl needs it, just goes over, there's a box. And that way there's dignity. There is, if they were embarrassed that they didn't have money, it's never discussed. The product is right there. And the girls have this saying, buy an extra box each month. So every girl buys a second box. They have $5 to $10, give or take. And that is what's donated to Lynbrook High School. And it's now started in Lawrence High School. It started in Hewlett High School, all here in the 5 towns, because it's that simple. And we know there are so many reasons why it's so important for these girls and women to have these products. They won't go to school sometimes if they have their period. They won't go to work. They won't show up at a shift. And these are all things that most people don't think about, but we do, because people tell us about it. What a godsend it was. I have a close friend of mine who was the president of CCNY, Dr. Lisa Stanakoiko. In her office in CCNY was a fishbowl, probably a 5-gallon fishbowl filled with tampons. And you could just walk in, take and leave, and not ask anyone. And that's the kind of fluidity that this project needs, that there is no discussion. Here it is, you need it, it's a natural thing. People that don't have funds for it, you feel horrible for. But
Right.
let's solve that problem. And
Yeah,
it's a
big problem.
solvable problem.
Yes,
You know?
so 2 practical questions. Number 1, how are you funded? I mean, okay, the products are given to you, but you have to set up a network of distribution.
Right.
And obviously you have people working for you. How are you funding that? That's number 1. Number 2, when the stores or supermarkets give you products, is that tax deductible for them?
It is not. The tax deduction takes place on a larger corporate level. So if we had a relationship with some of the companies, they could take a write-off, but it's such a chronic disease, so to speak, poverty, Malcolm, that it's every day. So we're much better off setting up a supply system that will constantly be there as long as people understand what the issue is. We are funded by begging. I write letters all the time. We get some grants. We have wonderful partners. We're around a couple of years already, so to speak. And some of our biggest money partners are the New York football giants, the New York Yankees, NBC Universal. We didn't get to talk about our project It's a Wrap, which is headed by Amy Riley in LA. We have all the studios in Hollywood giving us food from their craft services, from their TV and film productions. And Warner Brothers gives us money, Sony gives us money, NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, and all that. Our budget's about $250,000 a year. Which is,
yeah, that seems to be minuscule in comparison to what you do. Can the public donate if it's individuals, or basically you go after?
We would so welcome it. They could go to our website, rockandwrapitup.org. We have PayPal on the site. Our address is there. They could always write checks to 405 Ocean Point Avenue, Cedarhurst, New York, 11516. They could call us, 1-877-691-FOOD. 1-877-691-FOOD to get to us. We have Facebook, rockandwrapitup.org. We have a Twitter, a twit.
Twitter. You can tweet.
We can
And-
we can do something, but we have a Twitter account that we use. But they could just look us up, and rockandwrapitup.org has all of these projects succinctly written about. We have huge and great references. All of our partners that have been with us all these in the music industry over the years, we become friendly with the bands and their children. If you know the Grateful Dead, Phil Lesh, who was a bass player with the Grateful Dead, his sons, when they were in high school, did food recovery in San Anselmo, California, with us. We became friendly with Jackie Green, who's an up-and-coming artist. We have, over the years, Aerosmith have been donors to us. Many of them give us signed items to auction off. That's not as big anymore because that became a business of its own. But, you know, the key is for us that I have a great staff headed by my wife, Diane. She is our CEO, which is Chief Everything Else Officer. And she does all of our IT work with regard to finding agencies across the country. We get dozens of calls every week to help people find legitimate places to donate to. And we have a fabulous database that goes back years and years and years.
Yeah, just an aside, I think you have another little assistant trying to get into your office. If you look
Yes,
behind
looks
you
like,
to the door.
See, Henry,
he's trying to get in.
I'm glad he's not barking. Sometimes when I'm talking, I have an extra minion member over here.
As a matter of fact, now you're talking about Minion. I just saw on the Facebook now that Oslong has become a member of the Senate. The Senate now has a Minion.
Ossoff. Yeah, he's a young guy too.
33.
But that's amazing. It's
Is he
amazing.
Orthodox? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I don't think he's Orthodox, but I don't know for sure.
But I know he's first generation. I think his parents were immigrants.
Oh,
so it's pretty cool.
We've been very blessed to have so many different people over the years. We have over 5,000 volunteers throughout the country. I'm good at logistics, Malcolm, and that's what the thing, I'm able to set things up. I'm able to see whole pictures, you know, once I need to, but it's such a chronic condition. I mean, we are the original Sisyphus. You push it up and the next day they got to eat again.
Yeah, right. Anyway, Sid Maxine, our time is about up. So could you tell the folks how to get in touch with you, or?
He did,
one more time.
but he can say it again.
I am going to give you my desk number right here, 516-295-0670. 516-295-0670. I love speaking to people. If you have children that need to do community service for schools, we have fabulous programs that they can do. If there are people that are in high school and college and want to learn to do advocacy work, we've had interns for the last 20 years. It was interns that helped us write and pass the Federal Food Donation Act of 2008 and got it passed in Congress. 16-year-olds making phone calls, knowing that they're 16, but they had a script and were able to pass a law that has fed hundreds of millions of people.
Anyway,
you do great work.
Yeah, you do great work. I want to thank you very much for coming aboard. But if you have anything special coming up or have any special announcements, either call me or Maxine. And we have the show, The Many Shades of Green. It's on once a week. We'll be glad to shout out whatever you have, going that we could,
that might be another conversation, because we have added to our Whole Earth Calculator a whole new statistic on saving of water. How much water would it take 756 gallons to grow 1 pound of food in the aggregate? So if you give away 10 pounds of food, you're saving 7,000 gallons of water.
Anyway, Sid
That's-
Maxine, thank you very
We'll
much.
have to have you back on to talk about that, Sid.
Thank you, guys.
You're getting me hungry.
Great Happy New Year.
Okay.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year. Hoping it's a better year. I know it's been a little
It will be a
nuts,
better
but
year.
it's going to
Bye-bye.
be good in a couple of
Bye-bye.
weeks.
Right.
Bye.